What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to Community Permaculture Week 6 on water. This time it's a huge topic, so we have a lot of videos. Just before you even get to the deep dive section, there's about 2 hours and 23 minutes or so of material. I'm going to put stars next to the things that I think if you only have an hour to watch stuff, check those out. But since water is such an important topic, obviously I had to include everything that I felt was relevant, or a bunch of stuff that I feel is very relevant. In addition to that, we have some deep dives and articles, playlists of extra videos. So there's a ton of material in here. Just sort of bounce around and find what interests you, because water surrounds us. It makes up 70% of our body, so it should probably make up 70% of our course. But anyways, we're going to cram as much as we can into this discussion today. I'm just going to run through the videos in order as we have them here and give you a sense of what you got coming up here. Explained is a series on Netflix. They have a very sort of watchable episode on the world's water crisis. If you want to feel informed and scared at the same time, that's a good one to watch. But there's a lot of helpful stuff in there. There's some great examples of how industry is kind of a big part of the problem. And anyways, you check it out if you're interested. If you have Netflix, you can watch it on there, put it in any language you want, etc. Next up, we have another sort of basic overview by some people through PBS, Hot Mess, I think they're called, which again, general overview. And then the third video is Planting the Rain to Grow Abundance by one of my favorite practitioners of water harvesting, Brad Lancaster. He studied a lot of different sources, I would imagine, but one he cites a lot is this guy, Zephaniah Piri, and there's a film down on him in the deep dive section. But Brad has a very energetic, clear way of explaining the principles behind what he's doing. So hopefully you don't feel patronized by that. He is trying to make it accessible. But I think what he's done in Tucson and somewhere fairly close to our region is very admirable and worth the watch. Then you've got a brief video on Permaculture Design for Water by Andrew Millison, another one of my favorite permaculture educators up at Oregon State, who's done a lot of, we're going to see more from him later, including the next video, which is one of his trips to India, where he studied what they're doing at Aranya farm, another case of taking essentially desertified, destroyed land, which we have in abundance, sadly, and turning it into a beautiful, abundant food forest. So thank you, Andrew Millison, for that one. Then there's the full series on India's water revolution, which is a whole bunch of different water harvesting projects that are going on in India. Then we're getting into some stuff of like practical ways to, in this case, work with landscape and fish, and even harvesting water out of the air. So some cool kind of practical things we can do in addition to those more general videos. So one is an introduction to Chinampas, which are a Aztec sort of innovation, or Mexico City is known, that's the term that they use there. Similar practices have been done around the world in other areas in Asia with rice paddies. What it is basically is, in this case you have a specific use of basically dredging a swamp or dredging a shallow lake and piling that up into little mini islands, or creating canals in an area from what was generally kind of a flat area, making it have more contour, so deeper water in one area and a higher raised land that has a lot of this fertile lake bottom soil on top of it. And these systems seem very resilient. They're still going after thousands of years in Mexico City, or at least hundreds of years. And they're one of the most agriculturally productive areas in Mexico. There are a lot of other videos on Chinampas I can recommend as well, but those two, it's just about 5 minutes that'll give you a sense of what they are. And then the Jeff Lawton video. Jeff Lawton is one of the most well-known permaculture educators out here. His videos are great. I would highly watch him. He gets a little wonky and kind of specific sometimes in the way he talks about stuff, but if you want to nerd out, go on a Jeff Lawton deep dive and you will be rewarded for it. But he describes the kind of why. Like, why is this okay, right? Some conservationist types would say humans altering the landscape, right? That's unnatural. It must be bad, therefore, because humans are always bad for the landscape, etc. We're working through that in this course. We're working to overcome that narrative, that really unnecessary narrative. He describes how we're creating additional habitat, we're creating edge effect, we're doing all these things that are really beneficial to the land. And that's, it's a dangerous, slippery slope there. I think there is reason to be concerned about believing that we are the saviors of the earth. That's always a dangerous thing, but I think it's a compelling description of how these Chinampas can function beneficially and beautifully. Next, we get into just a really quick video on aquaponics. If you're not sure what that means or what those are, that should be a very quick intro to the idea for you, and describe some stuff that I forgot or didn't even know in the first place about the relationship between the fish, the plants, and the bacteria, multiple types of bacteria, which do specific conversion factors. So kind of an interesting intro to that. Warka Water towers is the next video, which are essentially ways to harvest water using the condensation effect in desert lands or areas where there's otherwise no water available, no springs or whatever. So that's a really quick video just describing what Warka water towers are. There's lots of other ways to do that, to use condensation to harvest water, but super cool idea. I love it. The next one is on how oceans clean themselves. This is a young guy who I feel like we should be paying attention to the youth who are doing big things. And this seems like a youth doing some really big things in terms of believing that we can clean the ocean, right? As we've been reiterating, if we have created these problems, we have the power to create these problems. It doesn't necessarily follow, but it is we could believe that we have the power to create solutions as well. So that's a great example of that. The next video on what is the Blue Revolution by Atlas Pro. Excellent videos. I love that guy's videos. This one is a nice 20-minute deep dive into the potential future for aquatic agriculture. Basically, the Green Revolution describes in the 1960s this vast increase in our ability to feed ourselves, and thus this vast increase in human population. And he's positing that deep sea agriculture, essentially, or aquaculture, could be one of our solutions to feeding a giant growing population, and describes ways, I think, compellingly in which that can be done in an environmentally neutral and or even, I could imagine ways that they could be done in an environmentally beneficial way. Then there's a report that he cites that he's got a lot of his info from in there attached for you. The next section we're diving, so that was our sort of ocean section. Now we're diving into California specific or Western US specific, or really anywhere that's dealing with desertification from overgrazing, from poor water management practices, which is sadly a lot of the earth. So we've got one on what's causing California's water crisis, another on California's water problem, and then why the American West is running out of water. You hear the through line there. There's a lot of specific information to our local context, and then there's a minute-long video, just a quick propaganda piece for a really cool organization, Heal the Bay. Talks about a Proposition W, and it's just good for us to remind ourselves that LA has a river, that we do have rivers around us. The next brief run through on the deep dive. So Thirst for Power, Global Nexus of Energy and Water. This guy, very articulate and very interesting. We're starting to connect the idea of water and the problems of water with problems of energy. And I won't go too into it. If you really want to get into this stuff, that guy is awesome. I think there's a whole series by him, like a 6-part series on Amazon. I'll have to look into that. See if I can find access for us. I think it is one of those pay for it, but I think if you have Prime, you can get it. But anyways, check him out. Great thinker on this stuff. Then we've got some sort of political video on the economic impacts and the power dynamics that are really that water mediates, and water is crucial to global power dynamics. So that video give you a kind of good sense of that. Then we've got some more from Andrew Millison on water and permaculture design, as well as just a quick video to give you an intro to what he's talking about, and then his full short online course, so a playlist by him. Then another one by him on rainwater harvesting specifically. And then we come to the video, as I mentioned earlier, on Zephaniah Piri, who is the inspiration for Brad Lancaster's Plant Your Water sort of initiative and styles. Then we've got videos expanding on that by Brad Lancaster on his rainwater harvesting sort of principles and practice. A quick video on Keyline Design at the beach. Keyline Design is something that applies maybe more to farmers with equipment, but I think the idea is very similar, and you'll just see how you can extend these basic water harvesting principles to sort of scale them into, if you have certain equipment, do very interesting things. But this is a description of the sort of principles that are behind PA Yeoman's Keyline Design, which is basically cutting very deep trenches along contour, very thin, deep lines that go along. There's a lot of technical stuff in that, but Keyline, the key point is the section where the water starts to slow down and start to flatten out. The landscape sort of flattens out. So, long story short, ways to recharge water in the land, just like we've been talking about, ways to plant your water. Then there's another video on California-specific water issues. This one wasn't. It's a good video, but I thought the other ones were a little more evocative. But this is a nice little TED Talk. Another TED Talk, which might, not have all the specifics correct. I'm not sure what sort of, she's an anthropologist, not a scientist, and I don't know about H320 or whatever that is she's talking about entirely, but I think that the basic idea is there, that plants have water, that how do people in dry lands find water? They look for plants, because certain, especially desert plants, know how to hold water, and she mentions in this gelatinous form. That's I think is I have an intuition, at least, even if I don't have the science to back it up. This seems to me to be more biologically available, right? I'll drink lots of water like this, but it doesn't always hydrate me the same way as, say, eating fresh fruits does, right? So there is something about water, plants taking up water, making it part of their cell tissues, that makes it available in a different way. I believe, at least. So see what you think. Check her out. Then there is just one final reminder. A video that I posted earlier that is an excellent video that if you haven't yet seen it, I would highly recommend checking it out. Hope in a World of Crisis, Water Cycle Restoration by Zach Weiss. It's 10 minutes, but it's very dense, and there's a lot in there. So if you watched it before, you might even want to watch it again, because the stuff he talks about with clouds and pressure and water cycles and hygroscopic microorganisms and all this cool stuff is just, it's a beautiful presentation. So do check that out if you haven't watched it yet, or even if you have, it's good. And then I just have some links to local organizations that are doing really cool stuff in Long Beach and the general area, in the LA Rivershed. So check those out if you want to get involved in your local, LA River Water Protectors, or LB Surfrider, Heal the Bay, Algalita. There's a lot of cool organizations doing stuff with water in our area. So thank you all for paying attention and participating in our regenerative future. I appreciate y'all. Hope you enjoy the videos. Hope you're enjoying the class. Send me any feedback, even if you're like, hey, I ain't watching none of this. It's because you're boring, bro. Whatever, just tell me. You know what I mean? I'm really interested in, I want to get this information out to people. I think it's important stuff, and I need some help maybe in how to do that effectively. And I'm probably not going to start dancing on TikTok or jumping around or throwing things, and I should edit better, but I would love some feedback from y'all if anyone is indeed following along. I appreciate that very much, and I hope you're loving the videos. Andale. Until next week.